My pranams to Sadguruma, to Swamiji, to my professor Panniselvam, to all the learned scholars, friends and others who are gathered here. A lot which I wanted to say have already been discussed since yesterday morning. So it leaves me that I need not go on repeating some quotations which have already been quoted, and yet when I speak, I may need some of them for the continuity of my talk. So kindly bear with me. Please don't look upon them as a repetition. Yeah? So, yeah. Now, we know that Indian philosophy, it has so many all schools of Indian philosophy have talked about karma. And Advaita is what I wanted to take as the basis for my talking. But then in the end, I think I'd have to make it more universal. After listening to all the talks, I need not be Advaita specific in what I want to talk. And it will turn out to be more universal than Advaita specific. Anyway, Advaita approaches the process of this karma, this is action or activities, and the effect of karma from the perspective of Atmajnana, from the perspective of self-knowledge. And according to Advaita, both originate from the same source. What is the source? Whether it is karma or karma pala, both of them, they originate from self-ignorance, ajnana. And since the self-ignorance can be sublated through self-knowledge, we also can overcome the effects of karma or channelize our karmas through an awareness of the self, that is through our self-knowledge. And this is inevitable even in our actions like bathing, eating, sleeping, and also scripturally prescribed actions and proscribed actions. Professor Thiagarajan used that term, that is for vihita karmas and nisheda karmas. And I would add the vihita karmas also here, and we may use these rules in all our activities. Now, Lord Krishna says that no one can remain inactive even for a moment. And here I would like to add, that is because our mind can never stay restless even for a moment. Technically, we may say that in deep sleep the mind is at rest, and I would say mind is not at rest because it is storing all our vasanas, experiences, impressions during that time. As long as that process is going on quietly, the mind is not quiet. It is doing some function. But Krishna says that yes, nobody can remain inactive, but King Janaka and others, they realized perfection by action alone. And this is possible for such wise people because they could discern this inaction, akarya or akarma, in action. In Gita 4:18 it says, karmanyakarma pashyet. And therefore, though they were executing their duties, they were doing all their duties, all their actions selflessly, and as a result, those people turned out to be as good as no doers, non-actors. And because they were non-actors, they became non-enjoyers, abhoktrs of the results of whatever they were doing. And therefore, their actions became as good as fruitless actions, karmas without any phala. And the crux of my talk is going to be, the wise person is a non-doer, and therefore he is a non-enjoyer of action. And I intend to present this possibility based on the Upanishadic allegory of two birds perched on a tree, and also some Puranic instances in the light of the Gita. Now, the Puranas, we have this analogy of the two birds, very famous analogy. They occur in the Rig Veda Samhita, in Mandukya Upanishad, Mundaka Upanishad, and Shvetashvatara Upanishad. And I would not quote, I would just give the quote is here, I would give you the translation. Two winged beings, inseparable companions, perch on the same tree. Of them both, one eats the sweet fig fruit, the other looks on. And here I would like to draw upon Bhagavad Pada's commentary. Now, Bhagavad Pada says that this tree, it symbolizes one's body. And because of the similarity of destruction of both the tree and the body, it symbolizes one's body. The literal translation of Dva Suparna, that is Dvau Suparnau, that is two beings which possess beautiful plumage. That is a literal translation. Or the term, this is what Bhagavad Pada says, or the term could refer to birds, pakshans, because of that similarity to being two birds. Now, Shankaracharya, interestingly, in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad 4.3.19, he interprets the word Suparna differently. And there he uses this interpretation as Suparna Shabdena Kshipra Shena Uchyate. He says, by the word Suparna, a fast flying Shena bird, Shena is meant. The meaning of this word Suparna is a fast flying Shena. Now this Shena, it can mean whiteness, or it could refer to a hawk or a falcon in what we are aware of among our birds. Now, this is just an interesting explanation that I could come across when I was going through this Bhav Suparno. The two birds on the same tree, they represent Jiva and Ishvara. This is the explanation Acharya gives. They represent Jiva and Ishvara in the same body. The Jiva is conditioned by the tree called body, and it is dependent on the tree called body. And for want of discrimination, this Jiva, it eats the fruits resulting from the karma of the nature, which is of happiness or sorrow, and which karma, which fruits, they produce various and peculiar tastes by way of experiences of pleasure, pain, or a mixture of both. The other bird, Ishvara, now who is eternal, pure, intelligent, free, and omniscient by nature. And here an oft quoted phrase about Ishvara is Nitya Shuddha Buddha Mukta Swabhavaha Sarvajnaha Sarva Sattva Upadi Ishvara. This is oft quoted about as a definition of Ishvara. And this Ishvara, against the self, it's an Atma. It is conditioned by Maya as a whole. Now this bird, Ishvara, both of them are on the same tree called body. This Ishvara does not eat the fruits of the trees, but it remains a silent witness of all that is going around it. And in the Kathopanishad, while instructing this boy Nachiketas, Lord Yama makes a subtle reference to both these selves as enjoyers. Now, what we saw in Mundaka Upanishad and other places is Ishvara is not an enjoyer. He is simply watching. Whereas in Kathopanishad, Yama says Ishvara is also an enjoyer. But he indicates that these two enjoyers are different from each other like shade and light. That is Chaya Tapo is the term that he uses. In that, one self, that is the Jiva, it gets shackled in samsara, whereas the other self, that is Ishvara, is free from it. Interestingly, both of them are mentioned as enjoyers, and therefore Shankaracharya, he gives a wonderful explanation here. He says, this remark of comparing both of them as enjoyers comes under the logic called Chhatri Nyaya, the umbrella logic. That is, when some people are carrying umbrellas and going in a crowd, we say all men carrying the men, there go men with the umbrellas. There are some men some of the people who are not having umbrellas, and yet it becomes a general term for all those people who are going in that crowd. And in these analogies, it is always clear that the jiva is always active, either doing a karma or enjoying the fruit of a karma. And by saying that Ishvara is a silent witness, we may hasten to think that Ishvara is inactive. But that is far from the truth. Why? Because Ishvara is always busy, either doing creation, sustenance, dissolution, always listening to our prayers and granting or not granting, punishing. All these things are happening. And that way he is the dispenser of the fruits of the karma. He is a karma paladata. And interestingly, not randomly, but appropriately, depending on our karmas, not on his karmas, though he is very active. For him, his karya, whatever is his activity, is a sport, it's a leela. And therefore, whatever Ishvara does becomes a non-action for him. It becomes an akarya for Ishvara, not for the jiva. Now, is it possible for us human beings that all the actions that we do or must do can become or can be made to become non-action? To say that this is possible for all varnas, ashramas, genders, I would draw upon the instances of Kapila Muni, the only son of Kardama Rishi, to represent Brahmacharya Ashrama and Sannyasa Ashrama, and the Kshatriya King Janaka to represent Grihastha Ashrama. Now, without going into much details, this Kapila Muni, the earliest mention about him is in the Rig Veda, and there, if we see the Rig Veda mantra and Ralph Griffith's translation to it, it translates Kapila as tawny. Tawny means red colored. And the translation of the mantra indicates that this is one of the 10 sense organs. That is what we understand from the Rig Veda mantra. But if we see our Puranas, in the Puranas, if we see the Puranas, like the Brahmanda Purana or the Bhagavad Gita 10:26, here in the Brahmanda and also the Srimad Bhagavata Purana, which I will be touching upon, the Brahmanda Purana very clearly it says, the Lord Narayana will protect us all. The Lord of the universe, that is Narayana, is now born in the world as Kapilacharya, indicating that this Kapila is an incarnation of Lord Narayana. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna affirms that this Kapila is none other than himself. That means Kapila Muni is an incarnation of Lord Narayana. And we have the story in this Srimad Bhagavata Purana. I will not recall the story from Srimad Bhagavata Purana. The same thing, the same story is translated in Mahabhagavatam in Tamil, and because I would like to share our literature also in a public forum whenever I get an opportunity, I would like to share those particular verses from Mahabhagavatam in Tamil, and I will give the translation, the story remaining the same. The story is Kapila Muni is born to Kardama Rishi, who is already, he has had 9 daughters, he has given them away in marriage, and now he is ready to leave for the forest for a spiritual pursuit. And at that time his wife Devahuti is asking him, who will now instruct me on the spiritual knowledge? At that time Lord Vishnu or Lord Narayana appears, and by some accounts it is Lord Brahma who appears and says, Lord Narayana himself will be born as your son and instruct you. And then this Karda Maharishi waits. When the son is born and is old enough, the son is also, the Karda Maharishi leaves, and when the son is old enough, he instructs mother. This is the Kapila Patalam, or that is in the Bhagavata Purana, which is reproduced in the Mahabhagavatam. And I have just reproduced this Tamil, this one, I am not going to read them, but there is one particular word that I am very particular about, and that is, if you see that the word Therivai is there. Where is it? Therivai Agiya. Oh, it's one, is it? Yes. See, you can see the word Therivai. Therivayage Devakute. This is important here. I mean, this is something interesting. Now, I won't say very important. What it suggests is, this Devahuti was already about 25 to 31 years old. When we say that she was, this one, she is, by the word Therivai, it means that she was already old enough. And and she has already given birth to 9 daughters who are old enough, they have been married. And at that age, she is giving birth to a small boy who then has to grow up, and that boy is also now ready to leave. Kapila Muni, he is ready to leave, he wants to leave, and this is where I am very interested. So, this is a time when Devahuti is asking the son, but what is interesting is the scenario where Devahuti is going to ask the son to help her. I think I may overshoot the time, I don't know. Okay. So, it is in Bhagavatam, very interesting portion. This is, I am very interested in explaining this. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 25, Text 6. It describes a scenario when Devahuti requests the son to impart her with spiritual knowledge, and Kapila imparts the same to her. And what is the verse there? Tam asinam akarmanam tattva margagra darshanam swasutam devahutyaha dhatuhu samsmarati vachaya. Now, Srila Prabhupada, he translates this verse as, when Kapila, who could show her the ultimate goal of the absolute truth, was sitting leisurely. This is what I am interested in. He was sitting leisurely before her. Devahuti remembered the words Brahma had spoken to her, and she therefore began to question Kapila as follows, and naturally she is going to ask for spiritual knowledge, and that is where the story proceeds. But my interest is in this phrase, sitting leisurely. This is noteworthy in my opinion. In effect, according to me, he interprets this akarya, that is asinam akarmanam, that is this akarya, as being relaxed. Yesterday, in his talk on Dvaita philosophy, Professor Srinivasa Acharya, he mentioned how the pace of anybody's actions should be, anybody's thinking should be, it should be equivalent to the pace of a 9-month-old, 9-month pregnant women. That is the kind of pace that at which we should be moving, or even our thoughts should be moving. And I think, this is one example of how leisurely things can be for a person when Devahuti is approaching Kapila. Now, if we see this, then we can come to a conclusion. We can understand from Karda Maharishi's life and from Kapila Muni's life that or Devahuti's life, that Grahasthashrama, and here I am touching upon the point of women. Okay, Grahasthashrama, it is not a shackle. Even our Sadguruma, Grahasthashrama is not a shackle for a self-realized person. This is what I would like to bring about. And here there is a small episode we can bring about on Yajnavalkya Maharishi and King Janaka. They are exemplars, that even they who were Grihasthashramas, they were not shackled by what this was doing to them. The same thing, when Yajnavalkya Maharishi, he visits King Janaka, he is asking, what brings you here? Is it cattle or is it what? Or discussion on philosophy? And the Maharishi says, both. So, they can go hand in hand. If I'll be talking about prioritizing very shortly, because I don't have much time. And again, the Yoga Yajnavalkya also, when King Janaka, he organizes a yajna, at that, even at that sacrifice, this Gargi, Vachaka Devi, and this Maharishi, Yajnavalkya, they are engaged in a debate. And her question is, you have 2 wives. So her question is, how can you also be a self-realized person? How can you get into this kind of a pursuit? And Yajnavalkya points out, it is not love or possession per se that can cause the bondage. It is the attachment to the possessions that causes the bondage. One can love others selflessly and can remain detached despite having possessions. Then they are liberated. And this is what Yajnavalkya explains to Gargi. And in the Yoga Vasishtha, we have the story. Can you please put it off? You have to pause it, please. In the Yoga Vasishtha, we have the story of King Janaka. We have the story of King Janaka. There, Vyasa, he sends his son, fire. The son is born from the fire of sacrifice yajna, and therefore now this boy, he doesn't want to get into Grihasthashrama or anything. But Vyasa wants the son to know that it is possible that even in Grihasthashrama one can get self-knowledge and self-realization. So he sends him to King Janaka. And of course, Shuka, he is apprehensive about this man. How can he teach me anything about self-knowledge or self-realization? Now, Janaka gives him 2 lamps filled with oil and sends him around. He said, go around the city with these 2 lamps. Not a drop should spill out. And take in all the sights of the city and come back. And when Sukha comes back, no, he has not spilled the oil and he has not taken the sights in. He has made his rounds around the city. And this is how Janaka tries to make Shuka understand it is possible to remain a Grihastha doing all the activities and yet not lose sight of what is the highest Purushartha. And what happens is, in this, our obsession with Yoga Kshema is what? Is the obstacle to liberation. Yoga is accumulation and Kshema is preservation or protection of what is accumulated. If we are always preoccupied with accumulating and trying to protect, we are never going to think of the higher goals in life. And so this is actually Jadabharada's life, if we think about it. At the time of his death, because of his fondness for a little deer, he is only thinking of the deer and not of what is all this self-knowledge has got, not at that moment. And he is reborn as a deer. But thereafter he gets his liberation, it's a different story.
Ma'am, if you will wind up. Yeah, ma'am. Yeah,
sorry.
If you...
Give me 2 minutes, please. Because I'm just working. So, I would like to say this inaction, as far as I see, akarya, it can happen, how it can happen is some 2-3 ways. One is you prioritize your duties and your responsibilities. As Karda Maharishi, he waited for Kapila to be born and to teach therefore. And same way Yajnavalkya, he left his sons and everybody in the care of Katyayani, and that is mutual, Katyayani being taken care of his son, and he took Maitreyi along with him because she was interested. So it does not mean dereliction of duties and responsibilities. It only signifies the prioritization between what is Shreyas and what is Preyas. And if we see regarding this prioritization, it has been the Shreyas and Preyas have been explained in the Kathopanishad 1, 2, 2 And it very clearly says that these are the two paths. Shreyas is there, Prayas is there, it is available to all of us. But what we need to do is to prioritize and to act as is the need of the hour. And in the Gita 9:22, Lord Krishna, he assures that one need not be obsessed with the Yogakshema, that he will take care of that responsibility for the Yogakshema of those who are devoted to him. Yesterday we were all given this small pocket book, her Upadeshams. In that, Sadhguru Ma, she says, it is on the 20th October 2002, she says, let your faith be strong, whatever happens. When he says he will look after you, he will look after you. You must not be anxious. And so this way, if we are going to go about our duties, let us do our duties. And they said, yesterday also discussed, today Dr. Shikha Sharma also pointed out, it is best to do one's duty according to one's own dharma and svabhava, rather than, do somebody paradharma bhayavaha. And there also, yesterday, His Excellency, the Governor of Kerala, he preferred to quote from 1847, which is also equally relevant. But one thing I would like to talk about, one thing I would like to mention about is, it's equally important to remain relaxed in our mind, to delegate our responsibility appropriately. And here, just as he quoted from Chanakya Smriti, Thiruvalluvar, he gives this formula for that. He says, he says, he gives, I've just picked up only two couplets, there is a long adhikara on that, I've picked up only two. What these two couplets, I will read them out. Seivane nadi, vinay nadi, kalathodu eida unarndu seyal, that is one. Idanai idanal even mudikkum endraindu, after giving thorough thought, adanai avankan vidal. These are the two things that I have picked up. What the two couplets say is, one must identify the right person for an action. You must weigh what that action entails and do it at the appropriate time. And before delegating a responsibility, one must give a thorough thought to who is capable of executing that action, by which means would he be able to complete that action successfully, and thereafter you entrust the responsibility to that person. This means all these that we studied, that we saw in the case of Kapila or Janaka or Yajnavalkya, they all were following these rules. I am expecting every action of mine to give me a result which I expect. It need not be so. It can be a result which I do not expect at all. It can be not even contrary, it can be bhayavaha also. It doesn't matter. But
ma'am, will you please wind up?
Yes. This means sannyasa does not mean giving up all actions. It only means giving up your attachment, your expectations to the results of those actions. And here he emphasizes, Krishna emphasizes what we must never give up. And he says, never give up action in the form of yajna, your dhana or austerity. And these must be performed. That means these are imperative. And the reason is that these are purificators. These are pavanani. And I was just mulling on this word pavanani, purificator, because we all know the word purifier, air purifier, water purifier and everything. And then I went into the internet and I was saying, oh, purificator is something is what is hitting me all the time. Why not purifier? It just happened that I came to know that subtle difference, that a purifier removes more gross impurities, whereas a purificator, in my understanding of what I saw, it could remove something more which is already where the gross impurities are removed. And so I thought, let me use the word purificator, because a wise person has already refined his mind through sadhana chatushtaya. It is enough refinement already, so what more? And yet he is asked to go on refining himself, because there is a possibility of always, gathering some impurity or the like we are dusting our house every day. And now I would like to conclude with a popular quote. Some of them, some say that it is by Lao Tse, which is pronounced as Lao Tse or Lao Tzu. He is a Chinese Taoist philosopher. And some say it is by Frank Outlaw, a man who was part of the Confederate, guerrillas during the American Civil War. But the more appropriate thing for me to say would be by that it is the source is unknown, and it is watch your thoughts, they become your words. Watch your words, they become your actions. Watch your actions, they become your habit. Watch your habits, they become your character. Watch your character, it becomes your destiny. In short, the secret for one to discern non-action in action is to convert action into non-action. To remain mentally relaxed, even while physically active vigorously, is to watch one's thoughts. And here it helps to recall Kapila Muni and King Janaka to mind at such times for inspiration. Thank you all. I know I've overshot my time, but I wanted to give you these points. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.